welcome back to the Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness Project. I'm really excited today. I have with me Rex Lawhorn and Victoria Whitfield, and they are the people behind Liberty Mountain Farms in Oklahoma. They have some good, strong, lofty, just awesome goals as far as what they're doing with their farm, and being self-sufficient, and it being an opportunity for education. And I am, like I said, really excited and happy to have Rex and Victoria with us. So if you two would like to go ahead and introduce yourselves and say a little bit more about what you're doing, that'd be great.
Well, thank you for having us. I'm Victoria.
I'm Rex.
And we are Liberty Mountain Farms. And we decided to build our off-grid sustainable homestead up on 20 acres in the mountains out here in Southeast Oklahoma.
Awesome. And do I see a pupper there with you?
Dude, this is our mascot. This is Frankie.
He's our guard dog.
Hi, Frankie.
A little camera shy.
That's okay. Happy to have him with us too. So how long have you, I know as we were talking before we started recording, you said you are still working on building your farm, your homestead here. So why don't you start by telling us like what that process has been like? How long have you been working on that? And what's your goal?
Well, we bought the land right about 2.5 years ago. It's almost 3 years ago now. So we've had it for a while. The process for looking for the right piece of land to do what we wanted to do to cover everything has been a lot longer. We were both independently looking. We hadn't found each other yet. But about 3 years ago, we found each other and then found our land almost immediately after. And it's the process has been more of a mental process than anything else up to this point, because you're used to living in the city, and it takes some adjustment to think that this type of lifestyle is accessible, that it's livable for our modern culture, because we think a Little House on the Prairie and how hard they had it. But so it took us a long time before we could get over that mental roadblock, and we actually spent 3 months down in what we call our clubhouse, just to get a taste for it, to figure out what we needed, what we didn't need. We had to factor in all of our different weather problems, the resources that we were going to have to encumber in order to be able to work the land, to build the house. It's in the mountains, so it's very rocky soil. So it's all been planning to this point. In the meantime, still trying to maintain our 9-to-5 lifestyle in the city until last year. And then finally, about 3 or 4 months ago, we said, you know what, it's not going to happen if we don't do it. So we just started doing it, and we're working from there.
A big part of that has been, trying to really hone in on what is your purpose in life? What is it that you really want out of life? Mm-hmm. And kind of whittling away at the things that you don't want. And I know everybody had a really tough 2020. But that really helped to underscore a lot for us about, what do we really want? What's really, really important? And for us, it really meant the freedom and liberty that comes from being self-sustainable. And so we kind of went through a period of kind of like, well, it's an all or nothing situation. Either we just get up here and make it work, or we're going to have to accept that it's going to take us a lot longer to get to that goal by moving back into the city. So we chose the all or nothing route. So here we are.
All right. Sometimes that's what it takes. I'm curious now. Rex, you mentioned that it's been, you guys have been together for about 3 years. You said you found your property right after you guys found each other. If you don't mind, would you share how you found each other? That's the story I think I'd like to hear.
So I'm actually from California. I was born and raised in Southern California, and I had found the Libertarian Party around Gary Johnson time and was looking to get involved, and I found my Liberty community online, and Rex ran for governor of Oklahoma for the 2018 cycle. And so I was working remotely to work on his campaign. And that's how we connected. And I've been trying to get out of California for a while, and I came out to work on the campaign out here, and just absolutely fell in love with Oklahoma and this guy. So I'd wanted to off grid. I wanted to do that for a long time, and then everything just sort of lined up. Everything fell together.
That's really cool. Congratulations. That's a great story. Yeah, Rex, I was thinking I'd heard your name somewhere, as far as running for office, or it might have been the last Libertarian convention. I don't know if I want to say I heard your name participating with that online and things. So I was trying to place where I'd heard your name from.
Yeah, there's a lot of different places that you probably might have seen my name in passing, even if it's just in a Facebook chat group.
Mm-hmm.
It's uncommon enough that people tend to remember it when they see it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I know recently there were some big ice storms. You guys made it okay through that for the most part, sounds like.
For the most part, it halted construction for a couple of weeks, but yeah, we're all right. We weathered everything all right.
Yeah.
We were up against a time crunch with those storms rolling in, because we needed to lay the concrete foundation to build the house on. And concrete won't set if it's too cold or too wet. And so we just worked as hard as we could. His son came up from the city and worked with us, and I mean, it was a rough couple of days, but we got it out just in the nick of time.
Good. So what other things have you taken into account as you've been going through your planning process? Like, have you, I know you said you're up on a mountain, so I don't know how the geography there affects things, but as you've been planning your house and things, have you made provision for things like tornadoes or other kinds of emergencies?
So one of the big things, coming from California, we've got earthquakes, but tornadoes are not really something you got to worry about. So moving out to Oklahoma, of course, I'm terrified of tornadoes. And the spot where we decided to build the tiny house is right up at the peak of an open spot on the land, and it gets hit by some really strong winds. And so as we're going through the different ways to build, one of the issues building on the ridgeline is we can't dig down, to anchor into the ground very far, because it's bedrock. So we were trying to figure out the best way to be able to anchor the house down so that we wouldn't have to worry about, our house blowing away. So that is absolutely something that we had to consider and take into account. And that took several revisions of our plans. But I think the number one thing to consider when you're, looking at living off grid or to live sustainably is your water. You just can't live without water. And, we could have tried to dig a well, but it would have been incredibly expensive, and there's no guarantee that it would work. And then it would have, high sulfur content. But right where we're at, we get the same amount of rainfall every year that they do in Seattle. So we get plenty of water falling from the sky. So we're going with rain catchment. And, that's just a matter of, building or acquiring enough water storage to be able to, last us throughout the year. But we get plenty of rainfall. Obviously, food is a consideration, and being able to grow our own food. That took a while to go through and think about what is it that we really need and how can we provide it for ourselves, and then having to calculate out how much do we have to plant and grow to be able to last us throughout the year, and canning. But the other thing that people really run up against is electricity. We are all very, very dependent on electricity for everything. That's how our lifestyle works. And figuring out how we are going to generate electricity, how much of it we needed. And part of that process also involved us looking at how much of our dependence on electricity is really necessary, and in what ways can we pare that back. So that's been a journey.
So I guess the whole point of the original question is it takes everything, and she went through pretty much everything that we had to consider, from everything from the sun to your wind speed to your rainfall to your groundwater sources to shade from the trees, available resources for building or shelter for your animals. So there's a lot to consider, and there's nothing that you can't overcome if your land is deficient in some way, but that just means you're going to be dependent on someone else for providing those resources through typically their terms because you're the one that wants it. So sustainability requires consideration of all of those things.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So before we go too much farther, if people are interested in watching your progress and finding kind of what you're up to, where can they find you online to do that?
Well, we're on Facebook with Liberty Mountain Farms. We're also on Instagram, just Liberty Mountain Farms. We also have a Patreon, just Liberty Mountain Farms. And we're hoping to be able to expand that to get our website and everything going. But in the meantime, those are the best places to be able to watch that progress.
Okay, awesome. How has and I know you guys are just starting with, relatively speaking, with your journey. I don't know if you've watched shows like Homestead Rescue, and there's some other shows I can't remember what they're called offhand. How is your experience, if you're familiar with those, differed from what you see there, if that makes sense?
I don't really think it has differed all that much. It's just we are doing everything and starting from scratch. And when they do those homesteading, that's an active working homestead that they're either looking to make an improvement or that they're transitioning or adding a new animal or something like that. But very few of those take it from raw natural ground and build an entire self-sustaining ecosystem out of it. And so that's probably the difference, is we just are starting from scratch, literally from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it more difficult. So you can take bits and pieces from each of them, which we clearly have, but probably the biggest difference is the fact that they're all starting from an established base of some sort, and we didn't. We started from city with no experience and are having to pick up everything along the way.
And I think that some of them are doing the same type of thing. One of the things that strikes me when I watch some of those shows is how much money they have to dump into it at the beginning. And yeah, obviously that'd be really helpful if we could just, afford to buy everything that we need to put it together. It would still be a ton of work to put it together. And it's been interesting and helpful to watch some other people's journeys, because you get to see where they get hung up. And a lot of it really is just being able to learn where your personal boundaries are and what your own hangups are. I've watched shows where people are in denial about the issue that they need to overcome because they're just stubborn that it just has to be this way. And one of the things that you learn is that you don't really get to control those situations, and you have to be flexible, and you have to remember what your why is and focus on that, and to try to not get hung up on the obstacles and the roadblocks, because that's a good way to derail yourself.
So that's I really like what you said there about remembering your why. So what is your why?
So for me, it's really, I think it's for us, really, the why is liberty and freedom. And, that idea of having the world set free in your lifetime. They say, to if you want to see change, then you need to be that change and lead by example. And, the best way to make a difference in the world around you is to change yourself and to change your immediate community. And, we've really embraced this idea of educate, encourage, and empower. And that is to educate ourselves first and foremost about the issues at hand, the issues that are standing between us and having that liberty and freedom that we want, and then being able to educate others on what that is and how to do that. And then, looking for encouragement and how to encourage others to seek that, to be able to seek that liberty that they want, and then empowering ourselves and others to do those things. And I think that's really at the core of what we're doing.
Yeah, that is our why. We are both type A personalities. We both have a knack and a desire. It's like an internal calling for teaching in anything that we do. Initially my thing is exactly what she said, to get away from that rat race and to change myself, to get away from what society says that we have to do to be valuable members, and following, the state mandated protocols, so on and so forth. You have to work your 9 to 5. You have to have your 2,600 square foot house in the city with your picket fence and your 1.8 kids and your 1.2 pets and 2 cars, both worth over $60,000, and the right clothes, the right people, the right connections in the community. And that's how society teaches you to measure success. And the thing that is probably most prevalent in my mindset is the fact that your success should be contingent on your happiness. If you are happy, you are successful, period. That's the end of the story. You don't have to measure up to anybody else's standards. You have to measure up to your own. And I think that not enough people have enough exposure to alternative lifestyles such as this one, that they have the opportunity to reevaluate where they are. So we have a core mission of ensuring that everybody that we know and that we can touch sees that this is an accessible lifestyle and that you don't have to follow those society mandated parameters, because everything that we're going to do, we're all in, like she said. But you don't have to be all in to bring a piece of this to your home. If you don't want to have a $200 energy bill, you can put solar on your house and you can do it yourself. If you don't want a $700 a month grocery bill, you can grow almost 100% of your food for a family of 4 on about an acre with modern agriculture and using heirloom products, GMOs and such. So we're encompassing all of that. And this is everything that we're doing is something that somebody can do no matter where they are or at what stage of their development they're in. So we want to educate, encourage, and empower them to take whatever action they need to be more free and to be more happy.
And I think that it's important to say that, working the 9 to 5 and, living in the city and doing all of those normal things is not bad. And we're not trying to communicate that it's, not an ideal lifestyle. If you're happy with what you're doing, if you're happy, then that is fantastic. But I know that most people are not really happy with what they're doing, and they just feel like they have to because they don't have an alternative. And, this idea of being able to go and, live off grid or sustainably, that's like a pipe dream for people. Like, oh, that sounds really nice, but it's not really accessible. And part of our mission is to show that it is absolutely accessible and that people should not feel like they have to do something because they don't have an alternative. We want freedom and liberty for everybody, whatever that looks like for you.
Amen. I love that. Absolutely love that. So what has been your biggest challenge so far?
Okay, well, I'm going to be honest and I say that it's really just finances,
That's
being
fair.
able to afford to get things rolling. And, we have a sawmill. We have like a small sawmill. And the idea was for us to be able to mill our own lumber to build the house with. But as everybody knows, 2020 did not go as planned. And, unfortunately, that put us in a financial bind. And that really just made everything much more difficult to get through. And, we honestly just didn't have the time to mill all of the lumber that we needed to be able to build with. And so we ended up having to scale down our plans for what we were going to build to what we could afford to buy the lumber for, the materials to build. And it was basically like, okay, well, this is the budget and build within those parameters. And then, the prices of lumber have just skyrocketed over the last year or so. So it's been a challenge, but, it's another one of those things where you get to evaluate like what's really important. And what was really important to us was getting up here on the land and, having that piece of being here rather than having a big house with all of the trappings in it. I'm just like, make sure that there's a roof over my head and that we can stay warm enough so that we don't freeze in the winter. And we'll work the rest out later.
Yeah, it's a matter of commitment. I was sitting here trying to figure out how to articulate it, but she said it. In our case, particularly, it was finances, being able to afford the materials to just get in there and do it. But I think in my case was actually making the internal commitment to be like, yes, this is where you're going. This is what you're doing. So invest the time, invest the money, invest the resources to just make it happen, because it's pretty much the same thing with anything. People, they don't like to change jobs because it's something different and they don't know what to expect. And when you do this, you aren't just changing your job, you are changing every single aspect of your life. So it's hard to get over the hump of what to dive off into the unknown with a degree of uncertainty that you'll never be able to completely mitigate. So once you decide to just go and do it, I think you've pretty much crossed your biggest hurdle other than gaining the knowledge and resources to get in there. The resources have been difficult, but I think mine was more being willing to devote those resources to something that you don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. It's going to be successful. I have zero doubts about that, but I don't know what that's going to look like. And that's scary. But the fact is, it's going to be better than anything that I've experienced prior to. So it was worth it. The uncertainty was absolutely worth it.
I know I struggle with not being in control of the things. I love to plan. I make lists and I plan and I do all the contingencies. But man, it does not matter how far ahead you plan. There's always going to be something that goes awry or that doesn't go as planned. And it has been really difficult for me to deal with, the delays that happen because like weather, we can't control the weather. We're talking about, we were up against the time crunch with the storms coming in, being able to lay the foundation. We're in a spot right now where we're in a time crunch because we can't get the roofing up because we've got 22 to 50 mile an hour winds going on, intermittently. And, we're up on the top of the mountain. So we're going to catch those winds if we try to put roofing up. And so just being able to, that's been, I guess, being able to deal with that has been, it's been a learning curve, but I think that I can say that I am a better person now because of it, because it's been hard lessons to learn.
And that was one of the things I was going to ask too, is how has this changed you so far?
Yeah. Being able to let go has been difficult, but also it has been so freeing to be able to just know that no matter what happens, it's still going to be okay. And I mean, there have been times where I've just completely broke down crying and just like, what am I doing? And just, being scared about the unknown. But I think that it has definitely made me a stronger person. And I have learned to be able to find peace through the chaos. And the other thing is the perspective, coming out to the forest and sitting in the trees and listening to the wind and all of that just really, really shifts your perspective about what's really important. And, you know, there are a lot of things to be stressed about in the world right now. But to realize that if we had been up here on the mountain and disconnected from media, we would have had no idea that any of it was going on, and we would have been in complete peace, except for, you know, the stress that comes with just the ins and outs of living on a farm.
I think she's right. And it's been the same for me. It's a degree of liberation. I have never been one who was very tied up in material success, but at the same time, I knew that, you know, I had to have food, I had to have shelter, I had to have transportation, I had to have a job, I had to have income. And all of that is just weight that our society in general just unnecessarily places upon our shoulders. And being up here and knowing that I'm going to be able to eat, I am going to be able to be warm and safe inside of my home. I don't need $100,000 a year to do that. I need maybe $5,000 a year to do that. And that just, it relieves the pressure off of you, the demands that you place on yourself because you believe it's an expectation or because you believe it's the avenue. This is the way. And it's really not. That's not what it should be about. And we are social animals by nature, and that's a hard hump to overcome. But it has been extremely liberating. I've become a much more open, accommodating person. You know, I am much more willing to talk to other people about pretty much any issue out there, because I don't feel that I have to maintain a particular image or perspective, and that I don't have to conform to some social expectation. I can just be open and honest with everybody. And that's just an extension of all of the other things that I felt were on top of my shoulders. So probably my biggest change is just being more open to the world and everything and everyone in it.
I also think that it's worth mentioning that, especially like as a woman, you have like these certain expectations that are either real or perceived from yourself or external sources. And those things have shifted for me entirely. Like, you know, I used to spend all kinds of time worrying about my appearance and things like that. And now all I'm really concerned about is, am I going to be safe and comfortable in what I'm wearing? You know, my wardrobe and everything else has completely shifted because I'm worried about, you know, protecting my body from the elements and from, you know, bugs and things like that. I was so excited to get my overalls because it just makes it so much easier to work in. And it shifts what's important, and I think for the better, in my opinion.
I would agree completely.
Awesome. Thank you.